there's some stuff that it didn't go down the way you thought it was going to. It didn't go down the way it was supposed to. Like it's 2020 and we are still talking about the vestiges of enslavement in everyday life.
From the Center for Creativity at the University of Pittsburgh, this is Processing, a podcast that questions, explodes, subverts, and in some cases confirms what you think you already know about creativity and the Pitt community. I'm your host, Shannon Fink. This season on Processing, we're exploring how creative makers work in times of intense social change and pressure. What does it mean to make creative work when it feels like the world is on fire? Can creativity channel anger into community? And should it? For creative artists, the purpose of art during times of great social anger and protest is the subject of ongoing debate. As the names and murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, and more Black Americans came to wide public consciousness and protests sparked across the country, that debate became especially urgent. Visual artist Ivette Spradlin.
Obviously, there's some artists who are very much activists as well, and I think they really get a lot of energy in creating work that will bring people together for a cause. And others that, get overwhelmed and shut down again, So I think that there's some people who definitely ramped up and, and others who shied away. And there was, because there was a lot of conflicting stuff, especially if you were, on social media, where, somebody might post like, this is the time for artists need to rise up and artists need to do this, and putting a lot of pressure on artists to lead in a way. And then there's other people who are like, if you're not making political art, then like don't post it at all. Like if you're not talking about this, then don't, so then it kind of shamed other people for not making political art. And then I think there was like, then something would get posted like, no, we need your art, even if it's decorative and even if it's this, like we need to be seeing this, we need to be, like, so I think it was just so conflicting.
This conflict points to some pretty big questions. What are the social responsibilities of artists and makers? Is it irresponsible to make non-political work during times that clearly call out for social action and justice? And what qualifies as political art anyway? Prominent art galleries from Boston to New York to San Francisco face tough questions not only about their collections practices, but also their treatment of Black and Brown employees. The Los Angeles Opera convened a panel on race and representation. An open letter signed by 300 creators of color, including Viola Davis, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Billy Porter, called out racism and demanded change in the theater world. Some literary journals began to waive submission fees and offer premium services like critiques and expedited responses to Black writers. These responses did not always produce the intended effects. Pitt MFA graduate and writer Hannah Eko.
So I am I feel like I'm a sarcastic optimist. So I saw some like changes, like people are like, oh, submit to this journal for free. It's free for Black creatives. And you had calls for like different, and I saw that some people were getting some monetary support for different organizations. And I thought that it was a little bit, to me, and this is like my personal opinion, I thought it was sometimes condescending. A lot of us have been doing this work for many, many years. And I also felt like it was short-lived because even already 2 weeks later, I'm not seeing the same like extensions that were happening during that like week of turmoil. Like people were, there were some like other white creatives who were like sharing my work, and then that's not happening now. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still the same person writing the same book, doing pleasurist practice, but I'm definitely not getting the same amount of attention I was like just 2-3 weeks ago, which just tells me the level of actual understanding that people have of systemic issues and oppressions. But it's like, that's what I mean, where it's like you really have to stay true to yourself as a Black artist and be very like aware. I'm not saying don't take advantage of those things. I'm seeing it. If you see it and it's like something that fits with what you want to do and what you want to speak about, by all means, definitely go after it. But I also realize like I am not someone, like I really vehemently want the erasure of a militarized like police force, and I don't want police brutality to be a thing. But that is not also my entire summation of what it means to be Black. And I'm really tired of the only way people can see my body as alive is when I'm dead. Like, oh, some Black person died? How's Hannah doing? I mean, that's kind of scary. I have a lot of like, you know, side eye when I see these actions. But I do believe like if they are going to have longstanding change in the way these institutions are run, awesome. Like that is something that's going to help so many artists who won't have to hopefully struggle in the same way that so many of us have and feel ignored or devalued. But if it's going to be these just like pretty wallpaper, social media centric changes, then I'm kind of like, you can miss me with that.
Poet, blogger, and artist Tahirah Walker, with Pitt's Center for Teaching and Learning, was kind of surprised and angry to find the country stuck in a kind of Groundhog Day loop of discrimination and violence.
Right? Like, there's some stuff that it didn't go down the way you thought it was going to. It didn't go down the way it was supposed to. You know, like it's 2020 and we are still talking about the vestiges of enslavement in everyday life. In everyday life, people think that it is okay to build these structures that are designed for some people to get ahead and other people to be, you know, disposable, really, right? You know, and it's kind of sick. You just want to say Dracarys. Yeah, it's like when you're just gonna burn it all to the ground. And I was like, okay, all right, you know. Anyway, so yeah, there's some things about me that are coded, and I think it might be too much to try to unpack it. But generally, like this right here, you know, it's just, this is what it is. I like rap, I like rainbows. That's who I am.
Creativity thrives on complexity. It provides a way for us to explore and communicate our different points of view, our different experiences. Poet and activist Audre Lorde wrote that it is not our differences that divide us. It's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. For Pitt student Craig Hayes, writing became a way of finding balance, a way of making sense in a world that just didn't.
I think the pandemic part of it, it still feels very, very distant. All the social media and everything that we ingest, everything's just like, and it's like, okay, like go about your day. I don't know, but it feels so like distant, and it's weird. There was a point in which I did relax and I did rest, but there's a point in which it clicked, and I was like, okay, I need to write about this. Like I said, it wasn't really till like George Floyd and like Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, I think. It was when like those things happened that it all hit me. And I really started struggling, and that's when I really started getting into writing, saying like, I can't be the only one that feels like everything's going wrong. So I started, instead of writing in my notebook, I hopped on Instagram. And I started writing in my Google Drive. I would like screenshot it, crop the picture, and like throw it up on Instagram. And one thing weird I did, I took my page off of private, which I usually just like keep it on private, but I like took it off of private and made it public so that more people could see it. I don't know, maybe that's crazy, and like there's always that fear of people stealing your work, but I don't know. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than, you do want to protect your work, and that's definitely a must. But I don't know. It's bigger than me during this time.
COVID-19 broke our regular routines of work and community, and left without those usual comforting filters, many of us began to see things differently. The deaths of so many Black men and women coming so closely together in time and circumstance, but disconnected from any one city or police department or easily scapegoated bad apple, were freshly shocking. Patterns that were clear before now became impossible to ignore easily or without consequence. For dancer, choreographer, and pit lecturer Oronde Sharif, the pandemic and protests seemed inextricable.
COVID provided opportunity to people to protest George Floyd's murder. Without COVID, we wouldn't have this ability for the world to rage and protest the way that is done. So that's why it's a blessing and a curse. We lost people because of COVID. We lost George Floyd, and not just George Floyd, but that was kind of the impetus on this worldwide protest that we're seeing. So COVID, in a sense, provided opportunity for that. For me, it really didn't change anything for me, because it's like when you've had those experiences with police, that's always a memory. So pretty much everything that I tried to do is either about uplift or education. So it didn't make me want to create anything new, because this has been going on for me since, I was little. So it's nothing new. The protest is new. People's participation in the protest is new, but the content is the same. For me, until we see change, it's nothing that I felt like I need to create something new. If anything, it said, okay, we just need to teach more. We need to educate more. We need to do more to get people, just educate more. Because at the end of the day, there are Black people and white people who don't necessarily understand issues. And it's not just a Black-white thing, but it is a disparity thing. It is inclusivity. It is equity. One of the things I posted on Facebook was, I'm glad to see you protesters out there, but I also need you to vote. Because there's a part of it too where, well, we had to fight the power. Yes, but you also have to be, it's not just a one-layered thing. It is a multi-layered thing, and it's a multi-layered process. So just to focus on this one piece, I'm glad they're focusing on it, but there's other things that need to happen as well that we had to focus on as well. In the summertime, I teach the African American experience in sports. And I'm a highly critical person of Colin Kaepernick. I believe what he stood for was just righteous thing. To me, it was like an incomplete sentence once he said that he didn't vote. Because you started on a process, but didn't end your process. Oppression just doesn't stop by you kneeling and calling attention to it. Because at the end of the day, you could call all the attention that you want, but what's going to change that process? There has to be something that's going to help change that process besides you voting. The Montgomery bus boycott in the 50s, that changed the economics of those bus companies and made them open up. So, I mean, one action isn't the end all be all, but it has to be a series of actions and a series of plans, and not just we're going to go fight and protest. That's not going to help do it. Voting is just not going to help do it, but it has to be this ongoing planning, voting, protest.
It can be hard to focus on the process instead of the pieces, especially when we're gripped by fear and anger. What do you do? What can you do when the process seems to be broken? When the pieces seem so jagged and dangerous? Our creators have some ideas on that. Next week, we follow them as they take another step in their creative journeys and begin to work through the chaos of 2020. Processing is a production of the Center for Creativity at the University of Pittsburgh. The team includes Jasmine Green, Mike Campbell, Nancy Kirkwood, Kit Ayars, Erik Schuckers, Chad Brown, and me, Shannon Fink. For more information, visit us online at creative.pitt.edu. Music in this episode is by Blue Dot Sessions. Thank you for listening. More episodes are coming soon.